Hey, I'm talking to you. Hey everybody, it's Pastor Justin Walker here with The Whole Truth. We're going through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and I want you to come along with me. You first need a Bible and turn it open to Genesis chapter 17, and then you need to subscribe to the channel because that way you get notifications every single day. We're here on Facebook and also on YouTube every day, 5 days a week with a new video going straight through the Bible from Genesis all the way through. We've made it to 17. We're talking about this guy named Abram. In every video, I keep mixing up the name and calling him Abraham instead of Abram. And today you'll see why, because today he has his name changed, but God is really doing something in that when he changes Abram's name to Abraham. And I want you to see that. Look right here in chapter 17 and verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. Now just stop for a moment and recognize the gravity of the statement. Abram is 99. He was in his mid-80s when he was with Hagar. That was just the last story, last chapter. See, I've told you this before about the Bible, especially here in the beginning. Large amounts of time can elapse in even just a few verses. From chapter 16 and Hagar and Sarai and that whole story to chapter 17, we have now elapsed 13 years. 13 years. Remember, Abram was getting concerned, Sarai was getting concerned that maybe they wouldn't have a child. Yes, taking Hagar was a sin, but the even greater sin was disbelieving that God would make good on his promise. And so Abram and Sarai stepped out on their own and they did something stupid, and Abram took Hagar and he laid with her and she became pregnant, and Sarai got mad and she ran off. Remember that whole story? And God went and visited with Hagar when she was by the spring by the water, and he told her to go back. And she did, and they had, she delivered a son and named him Ishmael, just like the Lord said, because God had seen her in her distress. Well, now in chapter 17, 13 years have elapsed. Can you imagine? Abram has a 13-year-old son. And God comes to him again, 99 years old. He is an old man. And God comes to him and says, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless. And verse 2, and I will make my covenant between me and you. I will multiply you exceedingly. Now that's important because God is talking to Abram. He is speaking directly to him. He says, I am going to make my covenant with you, Abram. You are 99 years old, and I am making this covenant with you. It is not with anyone else. It is with you. The promise is yours. We'll come back to that. Look at verse 3. And so here's what happens. Then Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations. Before God promised, 25 years ago, I know earlier I said 13, but the first time God came to Abraham, it was 25 years ago. Remember that Abram was like 75 years old when God called him out of Ur. And so nearly 25 years ago, God called him and said, I'm going to make you the father of a great nation. Now, 25 years later, he's telling Abram, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. And that's where the name change comes from, to go from Abraham, which basically means father or good father. There's some other renditions you could go there in the Hebrew, but the idea of it is that it carries the connotation of a dad, father. And now he is going to be father of many. That's really what Abraham translates to, is father of many. And so now he's not just going to be a good father. He's not just going to be the father of a special one, but he is going to be the father of many nations. Just pause for a second, because God just told Abram, I'm going to make you the father of many. He changed his name to reflect that. And from this point on, he's going to call him Abraham. He doesn't even call him Abram ever again. I've just changed the name, and the moment I changed it, he doesn't say Abram. I changed it to Abraham even one time. He just never goes back to Abram. He is now Abraham. You will be the father of many. Abraham has none, no, not one son with Sarai. He only has this one son named Ishmael. But Ishmael came from the slave girl. Ishmael was born out of disbelief, not faith. And so how is God going to make this 99-year-old man, how is he going to make this 99-year-old man into the father of many nations? J. Vernon McGee made the comment in his commentary. He said that Sarai didn't have a womb, she had a tomb. But interestingly enough, just like life came out of the tomb when Jesus arose from the dead, so we see with Abram. Think about that statement for a moment. Isn't that kind of cool? That Sarai didn't have a womb, but she had a tomb. She was 89 years old at this point. 89 years old. Abram would have a right to question. Abram saying, wait, what is going on? And I just want for 1 second, just back up to that second verse, because the first verse, and look at what he says. He says, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him. And where did he start? I am Almighty God. That's El Shaddai. God is sufficient. God is powerful. God is almighty. That is what that's what that name means. God uses that name for the first time right here with this guy named Abram when he's almost 100. And he says, I'm talking to you. I'm going to make you the father of a great nation. Now, Abraham's fell on his face, and God says to him, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Verse 7 is now where we come to. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you. Also to give you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male in your generation. He who is born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant, he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Now, we all know what circumcision is, so I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about what the physical element of circumcision is. I'm certain that you know what circumcision entails. The question really is, why is God telling Abraham, see, look, I'm still mixing up the name. I'm just going to say Abraham from now on. It's committed, okay? So Abraham, why is he telling Abraham to be circumcised and to circumcise all the males in his house? And the answer to that question is right here. Why did God say it? Because it's part of the covenant. It is a sign of the covenant, of the promise that they would be part of his. This is a physical sign. He even says here towards that last verse that we read, what did he say was this? He said that in the uncircumcised male, verse 13, he who is born in your house, who has been bought with your money, must be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. So in your flesh, there's going to be an everlasting covenant. There's going to be a sign of the covenant that is everlasting. The covenant is everlasting. The sign is in your flesh. Now, what about us then? Does that mean that to be part of Abraham's family? We've already talked about this. Abraham, there's kind of two nations that are very specifically spoken of. We've got the nation of Israel, and thousands of people have come, millions of people have come through that nation. You've also got the nations of Ishmael that are now coming from Abraham. God will address that in just a moment. But now God is saying that they need to be circumcised to be a part of that nation. So do I need to be circumcised? Do you need to be circumcised? Does every male need to be circumcised physically in the flesh? Well, God addresses that in the New Testament when he says that we're to be circumcised in our hearts. In other words, the covenant is now a covenant. In the new covenant, it is by faith and faith alone, not of works that any man should boast. And so, yes, we are circumcised, but we're circumcised of the heart. We're circumcised in our hearts that we are God's. We are part of his kingdom. We are part of the family of God, and we enter into that family through faith in Jesus Christ. And here's the part I want to get to. Here's the part I want you to understand. Did you see that over and over and over again, what did God say? Abraham, I'm talking to you. My covenant is with you. You do this. You're 99 years old. You do this. Remember, you're 99 years old. Still no child. Not with Sarai. So there's no child, and God's saying, now I want you to circumcise your flesh to prove the covenant, to show the covenant's going to be in your flesh. Abraham is now supposed to circumcise himself, his servants, his son Ishmael, who's 13 years old. He's supposed to circumcise all of them, and he still doesn't have a son of his own with Sarai. Are you seeing an issue? The issue is that Abraham is going to have to accept this covenant by faith. The same way that you and I have to accept the covenant. Will you believe that God will make an everlasting covenant with you? Hey, I'm talking to you. God will make a covenant with you. It'll be an everlasting covenant between him and you. And you can be circumcised in your heart. You can be risen to walk a new life with him. Cut off from that old life. And walk a new life with him. And you can have that through Jesus Christ. Now check this out. Look at verse 15. Then God said to Abram, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and also give her a son. And I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. Abraham, if you're still confused, I am not talking about Hagar. I'm not talking about something that you can do on your own. I am talking about only something that I can do. And by the way, you join in the covenant through only something God can do. You can't do it yourself. You can't work for it. You can't earn it. There's no special thing that you can do that gets you in the covenant. God will establish the covenant in you. And he really means you only by what he's done, by his finished work. It's nothing you can do, Abraham. You go get Hagar, you messed up. Get an Egyptian slave girl. That's a mistake. Don't try to do this on your own. Will you trust that God can do it? Could God do this with a 99-year-old man and an 89-year-old woman? Well, sure he can, because verse 1, he is Almighty God. That's the faith part. Will you believe that God is Almighty God and that he can do it? It's through him. He who has began a good work in you, he is faithful to see it through. He will finish it. He is Alpha and he is Omega. Your faith is in him. I know I'm going long today, but I want to read on through. Look at what he says in verse 17. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Of course he laughed. He's 99. He laughed, fell on his face. He said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old, and shall Sarai, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abram said, he said to God, that Ishmael may live before you. God is saying, Abraham, it's you. Abraham, it's Sarai. And Abram falls and says, can anything happen with a 99-year-old man? Listen, with man, it is impossible. With Sarah's womb, which is a tomb, it's impossible. With Abraham, who's 99 years old, it is impossible. Let us say it this way. With us, you and I, who are sinners, salvation is impossible. Remember when Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for the rich man to enter into the kingdom? And all the disciples said, then who can enter? Who can go? And Jesus said, with man it is impossible, but with God it is possible. Look, so he says, just take Ishmael, and look at what God says in 19. No! Then God said, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him. I will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall begat 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I establish with Isaac, whom Sarah, he didn't even call her Sarai anymore, with Sarah. I got to look back and say, with Sarah, shall bear him to you at the set time next year. Then he finished talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. So, verse 23, so Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins, that very same day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, and all the men of his house, born in the house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Verse 25. Did you see it? I just want to point out one more thing. I'm at 15 minutes. I know this is long, but go with me here. Look, and Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Verse 26. That the same day Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, the very same day, God made the covenant. Abraham laughed in his heart, and God said, listen, I'm talking to you. And Abraham did it the very same day. Will you do that right now? God will establish his covenant with you. Ask him. Tell him. He's made the promise. It's through his son, Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life. That's an everlasting covenant that God will make with you. And he'll make it right now today. Will you receive his son by faith? Will you receive his gift of everlasting life by faith right now? That's what Abraham did. Maybe you're laughing and saying, what could God do with me? Well, God could do whatever he wants with you, because God is almighty. I'm addicted to drugs. God can save you from that. I've been prostituting. God can save you from that. I've been an adulterer. God can save you from that. I'm addicted to pornography. God can save you from that. I'm an alcoholic. God can save you from that. Do you understand that God can save you? With you, it's impossible, but with him, it's possible. Put your faith in him, and he will save you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. It's Genesis chapter 18 tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you then.